Good day, grade 12s. We are at lesson 5 in our series on momentum. Now, usually I start the video with doing the homework of the previous video, but the homework after the previous video was just for you to go and sit down and make sure that you are able to deduct Newton's second law in terms of momentum, which I thoroughly explained in the previous video, so it's not going to make sense to me to redo that. So I'm just going to jump in with our new concept for today. Today we're going to look at impulse. Now, before I start, I have two questions. Why is it better to land on a cushion than on a hard floor? Or why, when you jump, you tend to bend your knees when you land? If you have your legs straight and you land, that actually hurts more. And why is that? These are the two questions that we're going to be able to answer after this video. Okay, so let's start with impulse. Impulse is defined as the net force acting on an object times the time over which that net force works. So if I put this in words, which you must be able to do, I can say the impulse is the product of the resultant force acting on an object and the time over which the resultant force acted on the object. That I call my impulse. Now let's have a look again at Newton's second law in terms of momentum. That was the one that you had to make sure that you can deduct in the previous video. Okay, so if I take this equation and I multiply both sides with delta t, I end up with F net delta t is equal to change in momentum. But hello, we just defined F delta t as impulse. So here I can see that my impulse is actually equal to the change in momentum for a specific object. And this is called the impulse-momentum theorem. The impulse of an object is equal to the change in momentum of this object. Now I can expand this equation a bit further and say the net force that acts on an object times the time is equal to the mass of that object times its final velocity minus the mass of an object times its initial velocity. In all of these videos, I've shown you that once we have an equation, there's basically 4 steps that we go through in implementing that equation. First thing that we do is decide on a direction that we're going to call positive. Then we write down the equation, substitute the values, and then finally when we get to the answer, you have to make sure that there's a unit and that the direction is specified in that unit. Now I've done a lot of these sums, and I think it is important that you are able to apply the knowledge and not just remotely do as I say. So I am not going to do an example for impulse. I want you to go and do these 3 problems on the worksheet. And they were designed for a very specific reason. In one of the problems, you have somebody landing on a cushion. In the next problem, you have somebody landing on a floor. I want you to have a look at the difference in the forces that you need to calculate in each of these equations before you answer the third question, which has a lot to do with the initial 2 questions that I asked about why it's better to land on a cushion and why you bend your knees. I want you to critically think about what you are doing and deduct your own answers before we mark that in the next video. Please try this on your own and don't just continue to the next video. It is important for you to develop critical thinking skills. Good luck.